All right, that's a minute. Mason, you think kick it off?
Yeah.
All right, awesome. Well, thank you all for coming to the webinar today. We've got some senior leaders in the operations space and the convenience store space. The goal of the webinar is we're going to be talking about improving C-store operations, growth traits that owners and operators strive to achieve. My name is John Combs. I'm the VP of Sales here with Bandyworks. I'm joined with Mike Crowell, who's the operations manager at Small & Sons. You want to introduce yourself, Mike?
Mike Kroll, I'm operations with Small & Sons over the small stop convenience store chains. I oversee currently 5 stores. We're growing to 7 soon. I've been with the company about 15 years now. And thanks
So you
for
guys
having me.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. You guys are very much kind of in a growth phase right now, so this is pretty timely for what you're trying to achieve, right?
Absolutely.
Fantastic. I've also got BJ Cooper. He's a district manager at JD Street. BJ, you want a quick introduction for yourself as well?
Sure. I'm BJ Cooper with JD Street. I'm a district manager. I've been with JD Street for 15 years. Oversee operations at 9 stores directly, mostly mid-Missouri, outside of the St. Louis area.
Thanks, BJ. And you've been with JD Street for quite some time, right? You've been there for a number of years?
15 years.
Okay. And did you start kind of cashier, store level, and then move up into the operations role?
I started out as a manager level
Yep.
for 10 years, and then I've been in DM for the last 5.
Fantastic. So kind of growing employees is near and dear to your heart and kind of something that you've done throughout your career.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. So as we start the presentation here, guys, really our conversations over the last couple weeks have been around operations drivers, right? What moves the business forward and what can drag you back. And I know BJ, when we first started, it was kind of the red things that jumped off the page. Neglect and conflict were 2 things that really, when we started this conversation, were things that were top of mind to you. What about neglect and conflict were worrisome for you?
All the red things are worrisome for me, but really the red ones here, to me, all seem to be results of not following through on the green things. Almost opposites in a way. An opposite of attention can be viewed as neglect. When you don't have alignment, that could result in conflict and really all of the red categories there. So that's something that jumps out to me.
Yeah, absolutely. And Mike, when you and I were chatting, you'd mentioned on the green things, it's like, hey, where do I start? Right? Do I start with attention? Do I start with alignment when it comes to these things and rolling out process at store level? What Mike did you choose to kind of focus on first, or how did you get to that starting point?
Well, excuse me, you're correct. When we came aboard with Bandyworks, it was where do we start? And we knew we had our bases covered in the red areas, but we were never complacent on being there. So we found by setting goals, just a few simple goals to start with, and then jumping into the green cycle, having focused on those goals gave us the alignment we needed to actually get that process going, my team. Once we set a few goals and started working on them together, the alignment fell into place, and then that left room for all the other, down the line.
If you were looking at building out kind of a training and development plan, starting fresh, what are the types of goals that you would want to look at, at manager level, DM level?
Well, right away, like we're taking over one store now and purchasing another one here soon. So I'm dealing with a bunch of people that have never they don't know our organization or how we work. So it's good to be able to walk in with some structure and some guidelines. As far as, like, right now I'm trying to hire a manager, so I'm trying to give them the support they need and the groundwork they need to come in, and I can just give them structure right away, give them some guidance, and then set some goals as far as sales and such. So they have a direction, a path to start with.
Fantastic. And BJ, when it comes to goal setting at JD Street, what are, if you're bringing on a new manager, what are the types of things you like to look at from a goal setting, kind of that framework or fundamental that you guys put into place?
Well, a lot of these policies and procedures and structure was in place long before I joined JD Street. So more in my world, it is avoiding complacency. And just because we've always done something one way doesn't mean that's the best way, and doesn't mean that we should be given attention to figuring out ways to just improve that operation.
Okay, that makes sense, and it kind of leads into our next section here. So it's achievement, right? So what are those specific goals? And I think retention is something that you and I, all three of us really have talked about a lot, is if you've got good goals and structure in place, it's easier to keep and train people and move them up the organization. How does that goal setting and retention kind of play together for you, Mike?
Well, once you, like BJ said, complacency, if you hire somebody on and you're like, okay, now you have the job, here's your register, get to work, and there's nothing more than that, you don't give them goals, give them, like, for my cashiers, a lot of them where we look at the numbers as far as loyalty and as far as transactions per hour and stuff like that. And so that gives them a baseline for some goals to do better each day and each shift and each week and each month. And once they have those goals to focus on, it seems like now they're not left to their own devices to either wash out or decide they don't want to work here for whatever reason. And then, there's right next to another cashier that has the same set of goals. So they form an alignment right away. I mean, hopefully they do. And share numbers and look, hey, look, I had 86% successful transactions on age verification. Oh, well, I only had 76, but I'm going to try harder tomorrow, that kind of thing. So it leads into, setting goals, gives them something to focus on and keeps them around longer.
Yeah.
Starts the team building right from the get-go.
That makes perfect sense. And BJ, you and I were talking about kind of the measurable things, right? And one of the things you guys were looking at JD Street was the scorecards, and you kind of pulled the grades off of it for a time period, but then your people were saying, no, I really want that. Can you talk me through what that experience was like on that kind of daily reporting on what's important to your cashiers and your managers, and how that mind shifted for y'all?
Yeah, I think the surprising part to me was that it seemed they wanted the accountability. We were scared that by having those scores on there that it would beat them down a little bit, and they said, no, we want them. We want to see how we're doing. They wanted the accountability. And I mean, like Mike said, having that structure in place gives them something to push toward. Hey, I don't always want to have an F on my scorecard. Let's figure out a way to get that score up. So that was really cool to see. Okay. As far as structure goes, like you guys were talking about new training. A few years back, we created something we called a store manual. And basically this is a book that was designed to take someone that's never worked in a C-store environment and just teach them the basics. It goes through things like training them on register to, I kid you not, a page on how to mop the floor. And the neat thing about this store manual is it had nothing to do with corporate. We didn't write a page in it. It was all written by managers and assistant managers. It was written by the people that do the job. And what better people to get to do something like that? That created buy-in. And I think it really helps us in our retention process as well.
And I've got two kind of follow-up questions for you there, BJ. One, on the buy-in perspective, I imagine rolling out any tool, service, coaching, training, anything like that, that change can be hard. How do you get your people to kind of buy into that process as those changes are happening?
When you're a part of it, I think you take more pride in it. versus corporate just sending it down the line saying, hey, here's a book. This is how we want you to train everybody. It's like, okay, well, corporate wants us to do it this way, but having that pride in the work, I think, helps that process a lot.
Okay. And follow-up question on retention, and I think this is timely for Mike too, because Mike's in the process of hiring a new manager. But you'd mentioned when you're looking to hire, you try to weed out people that have those red traits, right? How do you identify an employee that might get complacent or might fall back? What do you look for from a hiring process to bring the right people in to get that buy-in?
I wish there was a secret that applied to everybody, but unfortunately, there's not. What I found to be the most successful is just hiring for personality. Is this person going to be a fit to our culture, to our team? Or are there someone that's just, hey, I need a job, I'm here for a check? Things that you kind of pick up on in an interview. Not that people with personality always work out. I've had some that have failed in the past, but when you have someone that doesn't have the right attitude or personality, they almost always fail. So.
And your hiring process is more focused on, hey, I want someone that's a people person, attention to detail, but like very much customer focused to drive that type of kind of mindset, as opposed to someone who's data driven, right? Which is interesting because a lot of the goals you guys are talking about are data driven. How do you marry those two things?
Well, when it comes to personality, sometimes it's not something you can really teach. People are who they are. I can teach anybody to run a register, and I can train people on data and how it affects their job performance and get better results from them that way.
Mike, how does that play into your hiring process right now? Are you focused on people first, or do you want someone that's analytical minded? What works within your organization?
Well, our frontline cashiers, attendants, we really look for people that are friendly, customer service driven, people that like to communicate with other people, that like to share. And obviously you don't want somebody that's an over talker at the register, but we feel that we make sure that everybody knows that every guest is greeted when they walk in the door. So you have to be comfortable with that right from the get-go. As they go up the ladder, hiring a manager, also we need all that customer service in that person. But I shoot for people that have an idea of analytics, numbers, sales, profits, margins, stuff like that. It helps because we're a small company that we generally always hire from within, and we try to. And in that process, sometimes you move people up that aren't really suited for the position. It's like, you've been here a long time. You're a great person. You're loyal. You've done a great job for us. So we've had people in positions that were not entirely suited for them, but with some coaching and guidance and goal setting, they've really shown their true colors and been able to come out of, where they were at and become a active part of our management team. So
that's fantastic to hear, and kind of leads into my next slide here on accountability. Mike, when you and I talked, you mentioned, hey, as you set up this framework to make sure we don't backslide, how do we avoid going into the red, right? Into those red areas. We're going to have coaching, we're going to have process, and then we're going to have follow-up or accountability. How do you ensure that your employees are following through, or what are the steps that you put in place to really get them to buy into the alignment and the accountability?
Well, like BJ said, he was posting the scorecard scores, and we do that at every location. We make sure that everybody sees that. And it has not been a negative thing yet. That it's right away. Even when there's Fs, I'm there to explain, hey, Fs are going to happen. With growth, you're going to have, a slump maybe next month or in wintertime or whatever. So Fs will happen, but it gives them the drive to improve. And that right there, they start setting goals. And from there, I make sure that my managers utilize the analytics side of the Bandyworks dashboard and our weekly emails we get to look at the numbers and then bring in the cashiers or bring in the leads. And if they're positive numbers, we give them a pat on the back. They say, hey, they look great. We kind of discuss what might have led to the improvement. So it's not just a, hey, you did good. We actually try to get to the root of what created the improvement. And then also, if it's a negative score, we try to talk them through it. We don't hold them. Nobody gets in trouble unless it leads to a shrink issue, but we just try to make them a part of the improvement process.
As you've started to roll out this kind of collaborative accountability approach, have you seen like a shift in mindset on some of your employees? Has there been kind of an interesting case that's popped out for you?
Multiple, lots of people that have like really improved, really changed their attitude. One of my managers, Wanda, she was really feeling like she was at the end of her career. And then we started putting a little bit of structure and then holding her and the other managers accountable. And then once she got a couple little successes under her belt, she did a whole 180. She is like fully invested into her store, into the company, into the brand. And she realizes she still has a lot of work to do because frankly, she's a little older. She didn't have a lot of skills with computers, and giving her little tasks on computers and helping her through it and seeing the successes has turned her around 100%. It's an amazing transformation for her. But for our whole management team, leads and down to cashiers, yes, I would say you see the change in everybody, the positive change in everybody over the last few months.
Yeah. What a boon to your business though, if you've got the ability to now kind of upskill these folks as you're growing and building out that organization. You now have the next round of new managers and new supervisors that are being baked in internally. That's awesome.
Yeah, it was important, and part of when I first got on board with Bandyworks, Tom and I had discussed creating a path to leadership in our organization. And we didn't have assistant managers at any location. So he just kind of threw that idea out there. Hey, let's put that next rung in the ladder from cashier to lead to assistant manager to manager and up. So we created that position at our big location, the assistant manager. I wish I had a spot to put him, and I would move him to Oregon and put him in that store if I could. He doesn't want to move because he's just become an amazing manager, even as the assistant manager. We really, we just look at him every day and go, holy smokes, where was it? This guy's been next to us this whole time. And it's great to watch him grow.
That's awesome, Mike. That's great to hear. And BJ, I saw you kind of nodding and smiling when I asked Mike the question on kind of any interesting stories on that kind of accountability together. What was piquing your interest over there?
His story is awesome, but I think what I've seen from it is it's kind of grown independent thinkers. People thinking on their own, making decisions on their own. Not just the manager. Sometimes the manager can keep that information to themselves and not share it with the team. But once you do, you kind of start growing that line of leadership throughout your store, and your entire operation benefits from that.
Yeah. You mentioned earlier in the week when we were talking or when I asked you, hey, are you getting more calls or less calls now? And you mentioned, well, I'm probably getting the same amount of calls, but they're valuable. They're calling me for a reason, and as they should be. What do you think has changed there? Is it focus and goals, or are your people just now better aligned on who to ask what where?
Well, I think now we have better systems in place. We have systems for repairs. We have systems that deal with HR type functions. And then we have Bandyworks, which is a system that helps deal with sales and shrink and age verification things. So I think having those system and those structures and those standards in place, I get less of those calls now
Okay.
than I used to.
And I'll move to the next slide here because I've got some alignment is such such a fun one, right? So it's how do we get the teams aligned? And Mike, you and I were talking about your food service program and how you've got kind of centralized sandwiches but your teams have started to work together to improve your food service. Why do you think alignment has helped with that, or how did alignment? You mind kind of sharing that story for those that aren't familiar with it?
Sure. Our stores, even up to a year and a half ago, a year ago, really functioned independently. Each manager, most of the managers were longtime employees. They had, managed their stores or their location for sometimes 10 to 20 years with little guidance from the ownership at that point. It was just like, here's your store, do the best you can. Even it went as far as they didn't even know their numbers.
Mm-hmm.
So when we started Bandyworks and then, set some goals as a leadership team, as the managers from the stores within Bandyworks, like just our weekly meetings, that started growing our alignment. Then we started talking to each other. The managers started talking to each other and then they got comfortable with that. And next thing you know, we have a big kitchen from our big store that's all brand new and they pump out a lot of food. Well, we started putting out our own branded grab and go sandwiches, wraps, burritos, stuff like that. And then we started moving some of those down to the other stores. We prepare them at one location, bring them to a location that doesn't have maybe as big a kitchen and sell them there. Well, that right away got the managers talking amongst themselves and saying, hey, that sold really good. Don't send me any more of those. I got an idea for my own sandwich. Do you think you could whip this up? And next thing you know, they were creating new sandwiches, new menu items. They managed the whole menu amongst themselves as far as ordering what from the main kitchen. So that became less of an issue for me, where I was the operations manager running from store to store, calling up to the big store going, hey, make these guys more of this. Make these guys, here's their sandwich order. Next thing you know, they're doing it all on their own. And they're reducing shrink and spoilage because each store knows what they should go through. And then on top of that, the new menu items, several of them have been pretty successful. So that was a whole nother facet of this where it just all came together, and the food service really helped it move along, helped everybody focus on the goals, what would do best for their locations and how to get it there to them.
Mm-hmm.
And just another really shining example of how alignment created teamwork that really worked and benefited in sales and profits.
Yeah, and you were driving the bottom line, and it sounds like spoilage was down too. You were able to avoid lost food by sharing that with the stores. That's
Yes,
awesome.
lost food, and then we even go as far as like grab and go sandwiches. We've tailored some of them to where they work cold and hot. So once they get 2 days near their pull date from the cold case, we can heat them and sell them in the hot case, which almost eliminated spoilage at some locations.
That's huge. That's huge. And BJ, you and I had talked about kind of every kind of C-store kind of can operate as a silo, or they do, and getting them all to start talking together, that alignment across the organization can really build teamwork, camaraderie, but also unique ideas like Mike just shared it. What are some examples that you've seen on your side and getting that connection point across the stores, across the portfolio for you?
Well, for us, like prior to Bandyworks, we didn't have technologies in place like Microsoft Teams or Zoom. And now we use these regularly. We've broken our managers off into small groups where they'll get on these calls together, and we'll give them one kind of operational topic, but then we'll give them something that's just to help them learn about each other. Like, what's your favorite food, or what's your favorite summer activity, to get them to know each other better and grow with one another and share things. And I'm hearing that in stores too. I'm hearing, well, I talked to so and so, and she had this situation that really helped me out, and it's like that's awesome. You know, we have manager meetings twice a year where we get all managers together. In the past, those have basically been led by, corporate operations manager. Ourselves would jump in there every now and then. But this past meeting, it was 100% manager led. The managers picked the topics. They sat in small groups together. We had more input in that meeting than we've had in any meeting I've seen before. So some very positive changes there.
It sounds like, at the top of an organization, we want to find alignment, but until you get buy-in from the people on the street, it can't happen, right? It needs to happen organically, and it's putting that coaching and the process in place that gives the opportunity for that alignment. Is that fair?
Yeah. Something I noticed about it is it's just fun. They have fun with it.
Huh.
So we just rotated our teams, and our operations manager sent out an email who would like to volunteer. And we've got volunteer for managers that you wouldn't expect. Our newest manager in the company volunteered to be part of this team. Like, they're taking ownership in it. This is fun. And it's in an aligned way. Even small things. We used to decorate our own donuts at a store. Mm-hmm. And the employees would fight over who gets to decorate the donuts because, it's fun. But at the same time, we're making donuts and we're selling donuts. So, there's a benefit from that.
Yeah, that's great. It sounds like kind of alignment almost gives a purpose, right?
Sure.
If part of a team and building. Mike, what are you seeing at store level with your folks, that purpose, or are your folks starting to see kind of long-term opportunities for career growth? What are you seeing on your side?
Yeah, well, just creating the assistant manager position and watching one of their peers jump into that role and run with it. All of a sudden, it opened a lot of eyes right there that, oh, Roger is the assistant manager now, and they're watching him just kick butt. They're like, man, okay, now I got people all the time asking me, is there another store where I can move where there's an assistant manager role open or a lead position open? And it's gotten to where people, when we have a store that's struggling with staff, whatever call outs or, just struggling, the managers will call the other managers to say, hey, do you have anybody that wants a couple extra hours, want to cover a shift? And they're going from store to store covering.
That's awesome.
So just having that communication, that ability without me having to get the phone call, hey, so-and-so didn't show, what do I do? Oh, well, maybe. So they're doing it themselves. Along with the assistant manager position, just watching everybody go from, and myself included, when I first met Tom and he told me what fun he had at his job, I was like, what? Man, my job's stressful. I want to pull my hair out most of the times. I can't wait to go home. And he's like, oh, that's not how it's supposed to be. But here we are a year and a half later, a little over a year later. And it's like, oh, my job is fun now. I realized that. And it was by setting goals and adding structure and getting buy-in and holding people accountable for the responsibilities we've given them that created a much better environment for people to grow instead of just instead of showing up to work. They want to come to work, and me included. I enjoy my job now. There's always struggles, there's always stress, but it's a much better environment to manage the struggles and stresses now.
That's awesome. We've got a couple more slides, but we've already talked for half an hour, so I figured let's kick it over to the questions. I know we've touched on a lot here. I've got Mason Cohen, he's our Chief Customer Officer. Mason, you want to pull open the Q&A for us and let us hear what the people are saying?
Yeah. We've actually touched on a lot of these questions. They were coming in and just, I think the natural conversation answered some of them. I think we talked about long-time managers. Mike, you had a great example of that. Getting some long-time managers and turning that around. Cooperation between different managers in the district. BJ, I feel like that question was covered. I mean, I really like those examples of everybody getting in teams and then the manager led meetings. That's
Absolutely.
always super cool to hear. Let's
You know,
see.
EJ, we do some of that, Bandy works with our customers, but that was an initiative that you guys took on internally on your own, right?
Yeah.
To really create that. I think that's awesome.
You don't mind if I borrow that from you, do you?
You can borrow everything. Everything I have is stolen from somewhere. So take it all.
Like all the greats. All right. And then the last one. So this one's interesting. It's for larger chains. And now JD Street isn't quite, so they specifically said 28 stores. Now JD Street isn't quite there, but as you're scaling up with a larger organization, having different management styles, different food service offerings, how do you build alignment? So even though there's everybody's talking about independent thinkers having more independence and discretion at the store level, there's still this need for consistent branding and all of that. I'm paraphrasing a little bit and adding my own commentary here to this question, but so how do you build alignment and goals and expectations, even with all that independence happening? What's kind of y'all's process for putting that in place? Just a simple question.
Well, are we talk? I don't. We're talking about specifics here, but a lot of the alignment that we have is all big picture, so it would apply really to all stores, whether you have 17 or you have 50. I don't know what specifically they're asking there.
I think they're talking about different managers have slightly different personalities, different management
Styles.
style. Yeah, how do you account for that in this process? It's because it is somewhat of a standard approach, but you have to account for all the different personalities and styles. So
Yeah, I mean, I'm for it. I think that makes us stronger and it makes us more diverse. I think the worst thing you can do is put people in a box. Like, this is the way you have to be. Having different personalities, that gives you, it really knocks down your complacency level. Fresh ideas, new ways to attack problems. I think finding ways to give your managers a voice, asking their opinions. What do you think about this? Things like that really popped in our manager meeting because they're coming up with the ideas, they're coming up with the solutions. I think that's a great thing.
And Mike, I think you might have an interesting perspective on this too, because you've got one store with huge kitchen that can support all of your other stores, and then you've got another store that's 250 miles away. That's probably the challenge that a 28 store operator might have. Just they're far away. Not every store is different. How do you get them onto the same team when they're so disparate?
Well, we're not a big chain, and we're trying to get to a small to medium chain. We're growing, but we do have diverse managers, and that's been it was a challenge, but one that I look forward to is getting these diverse managers on the same page. And really it was just setting a goal, setting, these meetings, our weekly meetings were the first goal to get everybody to participate in those. And then from there, we have all kinds of managers. You have authoritarian managers, you have the nice guy, you have the mom figure, you have, all kinds of managers. And for me, I just try to, when I visit a location or speak with the manager at the location, I play to their strong suits, whatever those may be. If it's numbers, because they're more of an authoritarian type person, they're like, I want my people to, follow the rules and follow policy and procedure and produce, good numbers, then I play into that. I'm like, okay, well, let's look at the numbers. Let's set some goals in that area. And then also I'm like, well, how is your relationship with your cashiers as a manager? Sometimes I got to bring that out to them. Like, not everybody likes to be, told what to do. They like to sometimes, hey, how are you doing? What's your plan for the day type of thing. Let them make their own decision instead of tell them what it is. then I'll move on to the next manager, which is maybe like a really mom type person. They love everybody. They want to coddle everybody and make sure everybody's okay. And to me, that's fine too. But then that's the person you got to kind of steer towards the numbers.
Mhm.
So it's a challenge to get everybody to move forward together with such diverse personalities. But to me, I just play into their strong suits and then give them guidance in their weaker areas. And it seems to be working out.
That's great, Mike. Thanks for sharing. Mason, did we have any other questions, or should we
I
wrap
think,
it?
yeah, I went pretty rapid fire, but we answered so many of them just through the course of the conversation, I believe.
Okay.
I
Well,
don't see
Mike-
any other trickling in.
Mike, BJ, that's thanks to you guys. So really appreciate your time here with us, and always a pleasure to chat with you gentlemen. And thank you all for coming to the webinar again. I'm John Combs, Mason Cohen with Bandyworks. We're an operational improvement tool. So if you're looking to improve your C-store operations, get better analytics, coach and train your managers, we're here to help. Give us a call.
Thanks.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everyone.